And welcome back to another episode of Business and Beyond's Feature Friday. I am Tanya Bartolini, and I have a fantastic guest today. He is a personal friend of mine and my financial advisor, Ken Steinmetz. Ken began his career in the financial services industry in 2001. He joined Janney Montgomery in 2019 because he was attracted to the prestigious firm and its core values. In order to serve clients, he prides himself on helping clients look at the big financial picture. Ken strives to make recommendations to his clients that are designed to help cultivate a sense of financial security in their lives. He considers himself as an extension of his client's family, and I can vouch for that. To further his education within the industry, Ken obtained and holds the Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor designation, and he is currently a member of Janney's Masters Club. Welcome, Ken, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tanya. I'm happy to be here. It's excited to talk a little bit.
Yes. So can you give us an overview of your business and, more importantly, why you got into it?
Yeah, I'll start with the second part and go to the first part. When I graduated from college back up in New York many years ago, really just no direct passion. I just kind of followed my older brother into the mortgage banking business. And that was really where I started the first part of my career. And while I was being successful in building a career, it was clearly not a passion, right? It wasn't something that I woke up every day just excited to do. In fact, quite the opposite. I found it very boring. In the late 90s, I did start investing on my own and just found a passion for investing. Like I was the type of guy, devouring a Wall Street Journal on or Barron's on a Saturday just because, right? And it kept coming up that maybe I should make that my career. But, I was actually at the time married with young children. And, the idea of starting over, it just seemed wrong. But the company that I worked for at the time, mortgage company, went under. And I just almost on a whim set my resume to Smith Barney and got an interview when there was a Smith Barney, by the way. And I got an interview and the path just flowed. You ever have one of those things that just happens? It flows when it's right, it flows. And I remember my first day sitting in that Smith Barney office, 7 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, this is great. Now I was changing my career. I didn't have any idea. I loved investing. I had no idea how I was going to get clients. I just knew it was going to be my career. And it's been that in spades, better than I could ever imagine. I did find my passion. And my passion is not only do I love investing, but I do get involved in people's lives. You do make a difference in people's lives, right? And the combination of those two things, I'm excited. 24 years later, I'm still excited every day to come into the office and help people meet their financial goals. So that's what we do. I mean, we really do in a big picture. We're it's not about the stock to bond. It's not really about investing. It is about people's lives. It is about trying to help people meet their financial goals, whether that be retirement, putting kids through college, buying their first home, buying a second home. It is about people's lives and becoming that trusted financial advisor who people know has their best interest at heart.
So you had already known what you're passionate about. And then instead of pushing yourself into a whole new career, life kind of did that for you, right?
I fought it though. I fought it. So my now deceased father-in-law kept telling me, I was talking to him, he loved the stock market. He kind of got me into the stock market. And he'd tell me, you should be an advisor. You should be an advisor. No, the idea of starting all over, I was a salaried employee. I'd never sold anything in my life. I did not think of myself, nor I still think of myself as a salesperson. But the idea of going from a salary managed position and building a business that's going to be 100% commission, I didn't know how that would work. And so even though I enjoyed investing and all that stuff, that transition, I kept denying it, and it kept coming back at me. I kept denying it, it kept coming back to me. And when I finally just said, I'm going to go for this, it was when when you got something that's right, it just happens and everything flows. This was that. This is
And
one of those things.
that is absolutely amazing, because so many business owners and business people keep fighting their passion, keep fighting that change. And so you stopped fighting it, you embraced it, and everything fell into place. And I find that that happens more often than not. Do you have any regrets from doing that?
Waiting too long. No, I mean, seriously, I probably should have done it sooner, but life happens when it happens. But in terms of the actual decision, no, it was one of the best decisions I'd ever made because, and it was funny because I knew it immediately. I knew I was going to be successful. I had no doubts. And by the way, the percentage of people starting, again, I started mid-career again, but starting in the training program, they tell you, you want to go up the training, they tell you only 25% of people make it. But I knew from the outset I'm going to be that 25%. And I honestly didn't even really know because again, I had never sold before. I was a commission person. I wasn't a mortgage broker. I was in operations. I mean, I was doing documents and stuff. So I had no sales orientation at all. So I didn't exactly know how I was going to get business. I just knew it was going to happen because I was in the right spot. My passion was there and I just knew somehow it would happen. And it did. And by the way, it started by cold calling, if you can believe that, which I never in a million years would have thought I was a cold caller. So
Well, see, and that's the thing. I've heard, mindset is 90% of the battle. And it sounds to me like you had that 90% done once you were pushed into having to change careers because the mortgage company fell under. Do you find that that really helped you get to where you are now? The fact that you just knew it was going to work, you knew it was going to happen, and was that like your motivation? How did that really play into your success?
yeah, and by the way, I could easily have gotten another job in mortgage banking and kept on that merry-go-round. I mean, I wouldn't have had a hard time getting another job there. It was just every time I did it, it was a dead end, and it wasn't exciting me. I knew I had once I had that passion. You knew you're in the right spot, and I looked around at the other people doing this, and I was like, if they have succeeded, I don't see why I can't. Um, and what was I mean, and it is kind of an interesting story because you do have to look outside yourself, right? I mean, life has a kind of inertia, and you think you got your skill set, but maybe you're capable of more than you think. And one of the things that happened when you went to Smith Barney after you got your licenses, you went to 3 weeks training up in Hartford, Connecticut, and they take a stack of leads in front of you and say, cold call. I'd never done that before, but strangely enough, I started getting appointments. I mean, who would ever thunk it? I mean, listen, you make 90 calls, you get one appointment, 90 people are going to hang up on you. But in my life, I never in a million years imagined that I would be cold calling. But yet that's how my career started for 2 years, 40,000 cold calls, got my business going. I was cold calling for seminars and people were coming. I was building a business. The next thing I know, I'm going to the Smith Barney's Blue Chip Council, one of the almost immediately very successful in terms of bringing in business. And all I can tell you is I still don't think of myself as a salesman, but I think when you've got passion and it's sincere passion and love for what you're doing and you believe in it, you're going to attract business. And that's what I think happened.
So I want to go to that when you just said, I don't think of myself as a salesman. And you have a lot of people and gurus out there saying that you're always selling, no matter who you are, no matter what business you're in, no matter whether you own your company or you're an employee, you're always selling. And I think sales is a different concept today than what we had thought of it, 10, 20 years ago, because it's no longer this high pressure, hey, buy my product, let me fit you into my product, right? And it's more of, like you said, it's a passion. It's something that aligns with you. You do very well, and you're there to help people, not sell them something that they don't need or they don't want. Is that
Yeah, what I mean by this is that, I mean, I'm selling, and obviously I was cold calling, so I was selling. My younger brother is what I consider as a true salesman. He sold cars, copiers, pest control, carpets, right? I could only sell this because it's something I have a passion for and I believe in, right? I believe everybody should be investing. I believe we ought to be working towards financial goals. I believe in what I'm doing. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think I could sell anything else. And because I don't think of it as selling, I don't think it comes across as selling, but of course I'm selling because I have to get clients, right? And I mean, I don't know, cold calling, but even with cold calling, I did something different. I wasn't cold calling with a product. A lot of people cold call, I got this great bond, I got this great stock. I was cold calling for seminars to talk about a process in retirement planning. So I wasn't even there selling in a traditional sense, right? But again, I think it would only work here because I have this passion for this, right? If tomorrow you said, "All right, Ken, now go sell pest control," I don't think I don't think I could do that effectively. Like my brother could. He could just change hats and go sell, you know. But that's the thing. And by the way, after 2 years of cold calling, that's when I got into BNI and the networking. That's when I started that chapter, which again was where I met you many years, later. So that was kind of that iteration.
I just want to, for our audience, I want to clarify and make sure that they understand this concept that when you're passionate about what you're doing, it's not selling because you're educating people. You know it's going to help them. And it's not a matter of, oh, well, I have, 10 widgets that I have to sell to someone. It's, hey, this is something that I really believe in and I want to help people. Right. So it makes that selling different than that traditional selling part that we all know. Right. And so most people say, I don't want to go into business on my own. I'm not an entrepreneur because I don't want to sell. But there is that big distinction between selling something because you want to sell it and push it on people and being passionate about something that helps others and is needed. Then it becomes a service rather than a sale. Right. So it's just a matter of what are you passionate about? What do you think people need? And I love that you're not a salesperson, but you're an educator and you do very well for people because investing is something that is definitely needed. And it's something that helps people feel secure. It helps their futures. It helps their kids' futures. Right. And so I just want to, I wanted to make that distinction. Um, so can you tell me, well, what is the biggest problem that you see in your industry?
Integrity. There. You have people when people, and this is, I guess, true of most professions, but people put a lot of trust and faith in their advisors, right? And the key here is putting the client first, right? There are in this industry there are lots of opportunities to try and generate revenues and sales in a manner that are not in the best interest of your clients. And while on one hand I'd like to believe, and that's why we're a heavily regulated industry. Remember, I came through 2008, 2009, and all that. We're a heavily regulated industry, and the unfortunate shame is there are shady advisors who are not doing always the best thing for their clients and are just trying to increase their revenues and sales by selling them goods and products that they don't need. And so that's the downside of the industry. But I actually think that works to my advantage because my view is I don't need to squeeze every nickel out of a client. If I just do what's right for them, at the end of the day, I'll make money, they'll make money, and everybody will be good. But unfortunately, that's not always the case in this industry.
That and so you just kind of touched on it. And my next question is, what makes you unique in this industry? And one of the things I think that you just also said that makes you unique is that you're more concerned about making sure that your clients' goals are going to be met rather than selling them things that they may not need. Um, so how does that make you unique, basically? And how do you use that? How do you capitalize on it, I guess?
You know, when I started at Smith Barney and I had a sales manager who was training us, he told me that you should expect to keep a client from 3 to 5 years and that you always need to be replenishing your client base. And that just like struck me wrong. Why, if I do the right thing for a client, why should I ever lose them? Right. And so my mindset has always been, you know, keep every client forever. Right. And if you do that, you know, if you can meet clients' goals, you can do the things that they expect and have a right to expect and improve their lives and enhance and prove to be a valuable person for them, then keep that client. And every time, if you can keep bringing in clients, taking care of them, you never lose them, your business inevitably will grow. And so if you have that long term, rather than this idea that you're going to keep churning some in, some out, I'm like, if I lose a client, I like that, that's like crushing. And I don't lose many. I do have a very high retention rate, right? So I just take a different idea of like, I want to keep a client forever. And what's great is now, having had clients now going on, some of them almost quarter of a century, what's amazing is how integrated you get in their lives and how you see them through their life cycle. We talk about this stuff, right? And so when I'm talking to people now, it's like talking to family all day long, right? So I actually do believe that this doesn't have to be like this. This can be a win-win. We can all win. Just do what's right, be what's fair. People, you know, they understand you're working for a living. But if you put the client first, truly put the client first, and be proactive in your service, and you keep that client, we all win.
But see, so from, you know, from a practical standpoint, from a personal standpoint, you're creating these relationships with people and keeping them. From a business standpoint, I also want to point out that you're saving your business a lot of headaches and a lot of money by doing that, because it costs about 3 to 4 times the amount to gain a new client than it is to keep an existing client, right? And so a lot of people don't realize that if you keep your clients happy, you keep them with you, you keep servicing them and keep them at the forefront, they're going to stay with you. And now you're just going to grow your business, just as you said, just as you did, rather than that churn and burn, right? You're just constantly on that hamster wheel trying to get new clients to replenish the ones that are leaving you. And it actually costs you a lot more money to do that, than to just make those connections and make those relationships. And it's funny because one of the questions that I have for you is, what is working in your business and how did you get it that way?
Yeah, well, first of all, we are planning based. So we want with most clients, we want to start with the financial plan, and we don't charge for that, which many do. And then it's creating. It's always trying to invest with a goal in mind, and then building a portfolio that meets that, right? But I believe that it always comes down to service, because my view is I should be proactive in my service, right? If a client calls me up and says, "Hey, just touching base, I haven't heard from you a while," that to me, that's a failure on me, right? I should be ahead of the game in terms of talking about this. This is people's money. This is money, but it's also their lives, and it's our job to stay on top of that and be proactive. So we do things like quarterly. We do quarterly WebExes for our clients. Last night we did a WebEx on Medicare. We try and give a lot of things that, you know, value added things on top of that in terms of a lot of touch points with clients, right? being proactive and thinking like that. So, and then again, of course, trying to do what's best for them, right? And a quick example of that, a client calls me up, says, I want to go buy a car, but I'm going to have to take out an 8% loan. Should I do that or should I pull the money from the portfolio? I said, pull the money from the portfolio, because I might make you more than 8%, but there's some risk to doing that. You're going to pay the 8%, right? Now, when money goes out the door, I'm losing some income there, but this was the right thing for the client, right? Or somebody client called me the other day, $25,000 in credit card debt. I said, what are you doing with credit card debt? Pay it off. Pull the money from your portfolio. That doesn't make sense, right? So again, taking the long-term approach, doing what's clients truly best for them, and being proactive, not just sitting back and waiting for the phone to call, but calling them first, I think is what makes us a little bit different than other advisors.
Yeah, and I will say that is so true, because you have called me on many occasions. How is everything? Has your goals changed? Do we need to do anything different with your portfolio? So you're very sensitive to people's lives and changes, and the fact that, as you grow, your goals change. As time passes, your goals change, right? I went from having little kids to now almost teenagers, so at every stage you call me and there might be a different investment strategy. There might be a different rate. And I love that. And I know you've called me a few times about different things that have come up, and you're like, well, I think we should maybe, take some money and put it in here and invest it in there instead of there. What do you think? And so you are definitely proactive, and it does make a huge difference, at least in my experience, it has.
Thank you.
So, these are great nuggets for business owners, because being proactive, it's not just for the financial industry. It's not just a financial advisor being proactive. No matter what kind of business you have, if you're proactive and you're talking to your clients and you're seeing what their needs are and you're meeting them, you're not only keeping your clients and making more money and, securing your business, but you're also uh, growing your business and, I mean, your soul, right? Because of those connections with other humans.
What was funny is we recently brought an account, and a client said, I'm not really happy with my advisor. I never hear from him, blah, 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 blah. Brought us the statements. We looked at the statements. James, my partner, and I looked at it and said, this is pretty good. And there really wasn't much wrong with the statements, but they just haven't heard from their person. They didn't even know that they were doing all right. And I was, it's a shame that that person lost that client, because they didn't need to, because they were doing the right things from an investment point of view. They just hadn't been talking to the client. And that's the piece we control, right? We don't control the markets. We do control our contact. So, I'm very mindful that I don't want I don't want my clients ever being in that circumstance. The tricky part there is everybody's got a little bit different expectation. You might think it's good to talk to you once a quarter, but somebody else wants to hear from you every week. So you kind of have to learn what clients' expectations are and set them over time. But that's our job. That's fun to do.
That's awesome. So another thing that I always want to put on this podcast so that our audience can learn from each other is, what are some obstacles or failures that you've had to endure, and how have you overcome those?
Right. Well, I would say there's obstacles in terms of the actual investing part, or failures there, because I always view our view should be to kind of look past where we're going and see. So, 2008, I'm going back a long way now, when that market had, really crashed back then. That turned out to be much worse than I had expected, for various reasons. So now that's made me a little bit more cautious along the way in terms of, just trying to protect clients' downside. But I think a big thing is, and one of the things again we try and do is a lot of the education, because people have to go at the right expectations. Now, one of the obstacles are, the greatest obstacle in what we are. I mean, truly, we are more psychiatrists than anything else, right? It is the news flow of the world, right? And the information and what people are hearing all the time. That's our biggest obstacle. They heard, and yes, even politics play into this, and it happens on both sides. And we have clients all over the political spectrum, and depending on who's president, what's going on, one side's happy, the other side's unhappy, and trying to push people, keep them from fear on one side and greed on the other one, and keep them grounded is one of the hardest things. And then I think the other obstacle, if you're going to go forward, or one of the things that we have to look at, is what the effects of AI will be on our business, right? Because can AI manage money? Can AI do your financial plan? When the market was down in April, I asked AI, I said, what should I do as an investor just to see? And they gave perfectly good investment advice, because asset allocation, diversification, rebalancing is something that people know, AI knows. Where I think our advantages is still to this point, people want to talk to a human being. I think people even many times even know what they should be doing. They still need to talk to somebody about it. So up to this point, one of my greatest advantages is that you call me, I pick up the phone and you get me, or I return every call by the end of the day. So people still want to talk to human beings. But going forward, if people get more comfortable with automation and managing their money, I actually believe AI can manage money. I mean, it can do a reasonable job, but people still want that hand holding. And as long as they want that, that's my competitive advantage.
So one of the obstacles you said is managing people's expectations. And so how do you overcome that obstacle?
Yeah. Education. I mean, we do a lot on education. When we open up a new client, there's certain stuff we go through. When we do our quarterly WebExes, we spend a lot of time on education, right? And so what tends to happen, again, investing is a pendulum of emotions. And when things are going good, what happens is we get greedy and we forget there's risk, right? And so on our quarterly WebExes, when the market's up like it was in 23 and 24 and 20 and now into 25, we always remind people there's going to be more pullbacks. Expect it. It's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen. Be ready for that, right? And that's why we keep a cash reserve. That's why we diversify, right? And when things are down, we try and tell people this is when you got to buy. I mean, so it really comes back to education. But the thing you have to realize, it's not a one-time event. It's a constant ongoing event, because you do this when you get a new client and you think they got it, but they forget it, right? So over time, you just can never take anything for granted. You have to be constantly educating people. And so we get that when the market's down, people say, "Oh, this is it. You told us there was going to be a pullback. Is this that pullback? Yes, this is that pullback." Right? That's why we kept that rainy day money. And what happens in times like now, when things are starting to go up, what ends up happening is clients who were previously more conservative, they get greedy. They're like, "Well, why do I have this money in cash? Why do I have these bonds? I should be making more money." Hold on, just know there's going to be pullbacks. There's going to be volatility. Then you're going to be thankful you have that cash, and trying to keep people, again, when they're greedy, bring them in. When they're fearful, bring them in, and trying to keep those emotions in the middle. And that is why I say we're more psychiatrists than anything else. And by the way, the stats on that, investor behavior. So people think pick the right stock, pick the right bond, pick the right. Investor behavior determines 94% of investor returns. Not what you buy, how you behave. Because investing is counter emotional. We are wired to buy into good news. We're wired to sell into bad news, right? Where actually a good investor does the opposite, right? Buy low, sell high means you got to buy into bad news and sell into good news. And we want to do the opposite. So
It,
that's how we help people through these things.
and so one of the other points that you had said was, do you think AI can manage money? Right. But I don't know that all of what you just talked about with human behavior and managing the human emotions and bringing them back to balance that requires another human being, right, who understands the human psyche and can pick up on the nuances of tone and emotions and different things to be able to bring those emotions back into a balanced state. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah, and it's more than that because it's also knowing your client, right? So I know, Mario is going to freak out. Market's down 5%. Mario is good. Market's down 10%. Oh, I better call Mario. He's probably losing his mind. I kind of know over time, and this is why when we get a new client, we kind of do a deep dive to try and get to understand them, but it takes a little time. But once you go through market cycles with people, you kind of know them. And you know their hot buttons, you know what's going to get them. So that's true. So, but theoretically, if people could take out their emotions, a computer can manage your money. And fortunately, people don't. People can't. And that's why the irony is when the market's down. I always tell people, my cohorts, that's probably the best thing for our business because it's that volatility when people realize, oh, I do need help. When the market's up, oh, I could do this on my own. I don't need any help. And then boom, you know, something comes up and they're like, oh my God, what do I do now? And so volatility, and believe it or not, I mean, listen, advisors don't like, we all like it when it's up too, right? I mean, it's easy. Our lives are easy. It's up, but I always tell people when the market's down, actually, when the market's down is when I bring in the most business. I get more business in market pullbacks because what's usually happening is I'm talking to my clients who then tell their friends, oh, I just heard from my advisor. He's telling me to buy. And the other buy person's like, I haven't heard from my advisor at all. Well, you should talk to my guy. So in those down times, it tends to be the time that we bring in the most business. When the market's up, even nobody moves their account that much. Well, I haven't heard from my guy, but I'm making money. You know, but that's kind of a rising tide lifts all boats. Um, but it's so actually in a certain sense when the market's down, it ends up building our business more because we are always high touch, but when the market's down, it's go time, right? It's like we better be talking to people, whether that was in April when the tariffs, certainly during COVID. I mean, we couldn't be talking to people enough. And my analogy is like, a fireman goes into the station every day. And maybe a lot of days they're playing ping pong, hitting the ball around. But when there's a fire, it's go time. But with us, when there's pullbacks, bad things happening, through my career, 9/11, 2009, COVID, all these different things. This is go time. You better be talking to your clients then, and we that's why we did the WebExes and we do all sorts of ways to try and communicate with people.
But I love that. And, I mean, I love AI. I think it's a great thing to have. It makes people's lives easier. It's more efficient. It keeps that, it's very objective. It takes away the emotion. But at the same time, like you said, we definitely need a person as well to manage the emotions and the human aspect of everything, right? Whether it's the investments or, I don't know, buying a car, right? Everything, we're human, we have emotions. And so you will always need those two together, I think, to make the best balance. Um, so how can people contact you? How can they work with you? Where do they find you?
Well, I mean, we have a website. We are on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on all those things. But a good old fashioned phone call, is always the best way for me because I like talking to people. You know.
And that would be the 954-762-4477.
Yeah, 954-762-4477. Phone. If I'm not on, and I do pick up my own phone. If I'm not on a call with a client or in a meeting, I pick up my phone. If not, my assistant gets it, and every call gets answered the same day. I don't leave here with an unanswered phone call. I
And
can email is fine too. It's a great introduction. People can even text that same number. They can text that same landline. It'll come through. We do get text through there, but any of those ways are good. My email is ksteinmetz@janney, JANNEY.com. Any of those ways are good.
Well, and Ken's information will be down in the chat and at the end of this podcast. So don't worry if you missed it or didn't write it down, you will get a chance to do that. And so before I let you go, thank you for all of these great nuggets, especially on how to build your business and, creating those relationships and knowing your clients. What would be your advice or number one advice to business owners?
Yeah, you have to be, you have to have passion and you have to be an unstoppable force, right? So, we talked about earlier, I never envisioned being a cold caller. And the funny thing about it is even a bad cold caller can be successful. It just means you got to make more calls, right? And so if you know that, you get a prospect every 90 calls or every 100 calls, you guys got to make more calls, right? But what liberated me from cold calling was networking. I did help found a networking chapter. Um, that chapter, I applied to that chapter February 4th of 2003. Here we are 22 years later, and I'm president of that chapter now. Again, I've been in that chapter for 22 years. So when I started in that chapter, a lot of people told me that doesn't work. BNI then, this network idea doesn't work. And in the first year, I got nothing. And you'd be amazed at how many people I see go into our group and quit after a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months because they didn't get anything. And they don't even understand that they have missed out on so much for being so impatient. You're building. Networking is farming. You're planting seeds. It's not hunting and gathering. You're building relationships. So if you have a profession that people like, and presumably you're in a profession that they need, right? They need your goods and services. If you're building relationships, if you're building a base of people who know, like, and trust you, an ever widening one, then you just got to know it's a matter of time. And the longer you stay at that, the more relationships you build. Now, you're no longer in the group, but you're still a client of mine, and you're here doing this podcast with me now, right? So you're building this network, and people quit before they get to success because they're so impatient. Now, I know we all need business today, but you got to have a longer term vision. You've got to be planting those seeds. You've got to be laying that groundwork for stuff that's going to flower and bloom later. And so that would be it. And for me, it was the networking. I don't know, whatever it is for different people, but there's somewhere there's a Thomas Edison quote. I don't get it right. It's like 90% of people quit right before they're about to succeed. Right? They give up too soon. They're too impatient. They're thinking about immediate rather than building a longer term thing. Now I get calls and emails and referrals from all the time from all different places, and from many times from people who haven't, or maybe are in. I have many clients or people who I get referrals from who were in a chapter 20 years ago. So you got to be patient, do the right things every day. If you have a good and service that people need, you will build your business if you keep at it and do the right thing.
That's it, folks. Do the right thing and keep at it. Those are probably two of the most important things for a successful business. Thank you so much, Ken. It has been such a pleasure having you here. And thank you, audience, for listening. I hope you've gotten the value that I believe Ken has given us, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tanya. It's been fun.